Hey, what's going on? This is Jay Farrell. You listening to the Hard NOC Life podcast. What up, though?
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard NOC Life, comics, movies, and TV, yeah. Pop culture with a different perspective.
Hey, it's the Hard NOC Life. I'm Keith.
Hi, I'm Dominic.
PSA, we're recording this a little bit earlier than we normally would, so if anything happened over the weekend, it is not going to be talked about here. So
Okay.
who knows what crazy things tend to happen. There's a lot of things already to talk about without, so.
Yeah, and just a TMI, I am recording this from curled up as Cyril Karn on bed pose. So there will be no visual component. But I'm doing it in honor of our fallen hero of the Empire. So anyway,
Yeah, I mean, there's
Still-
enough to talk
still.
about. So I definitely want to get into the final arc of Andor. Before we get into that, I wanted to ask you, did you watch Rogue One immediately after episode 12, or did you wait
within an hour.
So we'll talk about all of that. You may have
Yeah.
caught a video of me and Swara kind of gushing over the new Superman trailer, but I want to give an opportunity for me and you to talk a little bit about it, the brand new official trailer for James Gunn's Superman, before we get into all the Star Wars talk.
Okay, fine. Well, I didn't watch that one, so please set it up for me again. What did you and Swar talk about this new Superman trailer, basically?
Yeah, like we liked it, and we're excited for James Gunn's kind of like this, not necessarily just James Gunn's take on Superman, but like a different type of Superman that we haven't seen on screen
Hmm.
almost ever. But I think there are some and I will say this: I have a couple trepidations, but I know you have maybe a few more than a couple. So I want to give you an opportunity to air those out before we moved on to the main
Well,
topic.
It's not like a big worry. It's more paired with the Peacemaker trailer. Did you watch the Peacemaker trailer?
Mhm.
Okay, so James Gunn is in charge of both of those, right?
Yeah.
And in the Peacemaker trailer, there was a Berkeley joke. Did you catch the Berkeley joke?
Was like something about being a little woke or something like that.
Yeah, like he gives them all crude nicknames, and just like you can't just call us those nicknames. And the guy
Right.
goes,
Tim Meadows gets he's the one who accuses his like troopers of being too Berkeley or something.
right, which is code for too woke, was like, yeah. And it's basically a question because basically I feel, James Gunn has a voice that speaks to, let's just say, white dudes. And he's very good at being on this line of, I'm gonna say something kind of wrong and then I'm gonna check myself on it, right?
I mean, it's what got him fired from Marvel to begin with, right?
Exactly. So, and he's good at this. I'm not saying this is like coming from like a closed-minded perspective. He's a good artist. So my question is just like, what are you going to use your voice for, Mr. Gunn? Like, we get it. White dudes can say whatever they want and then complain about how they can't say anything. That's this loop that we understand, and this is a recurring joke. And so it's definitely going to happen in Peacemaker a lot, and that's kind of the gag of the character. And for the Superman thing, like, how'd you feel about that interview scene where they're sort of redoing the interview concept or Superman wrestling with his actions concept that they had in Batman vs Superman, right? But wasn't that like well executed, right?
Right.
So did you feel that was like a superior interview scene or glimpse into Superman's frame of mind there?
What I said to Swar is I liked what I liked about. I mean, it's 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So we don't actually know how it plays out.
Yeah, we
But from what we've seen in those 30 seconds, what I really appreciated was the chemistry between Brosnahan and Corn Sweat. And I liked how like Clark gets increasingly defensive. You know, it kind of starts off flirty and like, yeah, of course you can interview me, Lois. And then like, the Miss Lane where he gets into his super, and then she's like, okay, I'm Pulitzer Prize winning fucking investigative journalist Lois Lane, and I'm going to press you with some hardball questions. And then Clark is kind of like, whoa, hold on. I thought this will be a softball. You're going to ask me about my underwear or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I like kind of like how Lois doesn't back down and she pushes Clark. and Clark's naive, and he's like, I just was trying to do good. That aspect is really cool. I like that better than like, the Snyder's Superman like getting all flustered watching Charlie Rose and like, "Oh, come on,
Right,
I'm trying
right,
to help you guys, and then letting massive amounts of destruction happen in Metropolis.
right. Yeah, no, the Snyder Superman, unfortunately, it makes Superman come off as just a kind of cold sociopath, basically, right? This one is a different issue, and again, it's just a question, like, because just based again on that 30 seconds, the corner he gets backed into is like, well, I'm just doing me. I'm just doing me, I'm
Mhm.
because I knew what was right. And this is a very interesting, dangerous area. Can we agree on that?
I mean, it's reminiscent of Steve Rogers, isn't it? Where it's like, if
Yeah.
I say it's a good thing to, I'm not going to let the government tell me what to do. If I, what superheroes know what's right. That's the whole power fantasy of being a superhero, right?
Yes, it's a power fantasy. And so this is my question. How is that explored?
I think opening the trailer with that maybe hints that it will be explored at least,
Hmm.
and not just you know, I noted this in my conversation with Swar. Like a couple of the beats, I was a little like, oh, they're just doing that again. Like Lex
Hmm.
invading the fortress. Like that's the third movie where Lex invades the fortress. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
can we have something else happen?
Hmm.
But even like you said, the Clark intervening in an international conflict and then reaping the consequences. That's happened at least three times in the Superman movies, right?
Sure.
So they are a little bit treading like familiar territory again. It would be nice if they
Hmm.
explored different things, but I think tonally is where I'm excited.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think Corn Sweat looks great as Superman. I still am not a fan of the costume, but
Uh-huh.
I think his portrayal
Hmm.
seems like pretty good. I like the parents. I like the I'm gonna clean your boots for you. Like they're the most like Ma and Pa
Aw.
Kent
Yeah.
we've seen, and I'm glad they're both alive. I was worried that maybe Ma Kent would be dead because you never saw her in the first teaser,
Oh, yeah.
and they
Yeah.
didn't cast like famous people as the parents this time. But
Right. They did not. Yeah. So I don't know. It's not like I didn't like it. Do we like it because it was fun? It had a fun
it
vibe.
was fun. So what I didn't say on YouTube, which I'll say now, is and it's a running theme of our conversations we've been having on the podcast. What my worry with Superman is, and it was kind of borne out a little bit in the trailer. And to your point, like this coming off the heels of a Peacemaker trailer and the notion of like the connected universe. Because we get to see Rick Flag here, we see who's going to be in Peacemaker, who's going to be
Mm-hmm.
in, who was in Creature Commandos, and of course the other Justice League members. It's the like cinematic universe of it all that I'm a little worried about,
Yep.
you know? Mainly because what I wish happened was they never did that whole James Gunn announcement of the 10 movies they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't need that. I
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes it's putting the cart before the horse. Like just make the
Mm-hmm.
good Superman, even if you had all these characters in it.
Well, they really like slates, Keith. They wanted to put the slate
Yeah.
before the horse is even ready. We get that. But go on.
But I mean, that's the only thing. Because it's like, if this movie doesn't work for whatever reason, I
They're
don't,
committed.
at least Peacemaker's coming out a month after, and Supergirl's coming out next year. But like, you know, there is a part of me that just wants this to, and maybe it is,
Hmm.
and Gunn has said like these are still standalone that you don't need to watch Creature Commandos and Suicide Squad and
Yeah.
Peacemaker for this to make sense.
Are you arguing that too much hinges on whether people buy into Guy Gardner's weird haircut or not?
No,
Stuff
I
like
think too. I
that?
mean, I just think too much hinges on like the notion that this has to set up something else.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Like Supergirl's wrapped, and that's definitely coming out next year. And is there going to be an end credit sequence where she picks up Crypto and takes Crypto on her mission through space? Because Crypto's a very big deal in the Woman of Tomorrow storyline.
Yeah. Is it just because you're tired of sitting through the credits? I mean, we're all feeling that fatigue.
Maybe.
That Thunderbolts thing was just like, oh man, the eighth visual effects studio. Do I have the stamina? That's
Well,
the
I mean, Sinners had two post credit sequences, and that's not
that's
setting up a cinematic universe.
okay. Okay. So no, I sort of feel that angst. I don't know.
I mean, it's not so much even the post credit sequence; it's that like, can't this be a full story, or does it have to be here are breadcrumbs to follow in Peacemaker, and here are additional breadcrumbs to follow in the Green Lantern show, and here are a couple
Yeah.
more pieces. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's good when they're like, and this is actually a segue into Andor because
Mm-hmm.
what I like about now that Andor is over, it doesn't necessarily, even though it leads right up to like, I'm going to Kafrene and murking a guy, which opens up Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
It to me doesn't. It feels like if anything, it just kind of enhances what's to come rather than like you need this. Like it can exist on its own.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you don't have to watch Rogue One in the original trilogy for it. You know what I'm saying? Like
No,
people are
that's what
watching in chronological order. You don't have to, but it enhances what's to come. I don't know if I'm
that's
making any sense.
that's why it's so brilliantly done, Andor is. It totally reframes those two pieces, Rogue One and A New Hope, and adds information that you didn't know was there and in the first place, and it's all right that if you didn't know, I'm saying it's okay if you haven't watched Andor, but it adds so much information you can go back and rewatch those with fresh eyes. It's
And it
amazing.
recontextualizes, right?
Recontextualizes, reframes, and to me just adds a huge amount of power for in so many ways. Where the end of Andor made me proud to be Asian American, and I'll get to that
Mm,
in a later part of
that's
our
interesting.
rant. Later part of our rant, but just to tease because it is apparently Asian American month, and so we're
There weren't a lot of us in Andor though, so
right,
even
but
though
I'll get
Rogue One is the Asianiest Star Wars movie.
That's what I'm gonna get into. And yeah, because, remember in 2020 when everyone cared about Asian American stuff for like 2 weeks, and then I think it's safe to say we've regressed, and not we
Well,
haven't
maybe they need to start attacking this
done
on the
the
street more, and we can
right.
bring that back.
Oh God, yeah, and we haven't done ourselves any favors either. But we won't even go there. That's not about this. The Andor, the end.
Yeah.
What do you want to say?
Well, before we get into the specifics of the last three episodes, talking about the original trilogy and how it does kind of add texture that
Hmm.
wasn't there in those original movies. If anything, and I have been a defender of two-thirds of the sequel trilogy. Let's be real, one
Yes.
third of the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, yeah, I believe it's really 1/3.
Yeah,
I'm at about 2/5. No, is
yeah,
that my math is bad? Slightly more than what? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
yeah. I think with Andor, honestly, I wish all of the post Return of the Jedi stuff didn't exist. That includes the Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and the sequels, because there is a part of me that's like, it ends on such a beautiful shot, like not just the beautiful shot, it's montage of like all of the survivors and where they're going to be as we move into like the original trilogy timeline.
Yes, wire-esque that montage
Very,
is.
very wire-esque, yeah.
It's, yeah.
But knowing that like Cassian's going to meet his end, but yet all of like Clea and Vel and Bix have their kind of like quote unquote happy ending,
Yeah.
and knowing that like the rebellion will win. Like Luthen died for something, Lonnie died for something. Spoilers for the last arc of Andor, or even that like Nimic's manifesto spreading throughout the galaxy so much so that like Partagaz is like, what I should just end it right now because we can't
Yeah.
combat
Hmm.
this powerful message.
Hmm.
Only for like the Republic to exist for like 5 years and then go to shit, and then the rise of the First Order and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
Rise of Skywalker already kind of ruined the like promise of the future timelines of Star Wars,
Yes.
and I think in a roundabout way, Andor ruined the rest of it because it enhances the original timeline and it
Hmm.
makes like the post Return of the Jedi stuff just seem unnecessary to me.
Well, yeah, but okay. I mean, I don't know if we can do that cosmic level retcon beyond her,
Well, I mean, we can do whatever the fuck
but
we want.
right. Okay, but are you arguing that then it's sort of made a case for the a true trilogy, which is Andor, Rogue One, and New Hope, also including 5 and 6? In this retcon world, it would be Andor to Return of the Jedi, and that's the whole story. Or does
Yeah.
it stop at New Hope? That's my
Well,
question.
no, I mean
It could even stop
it
at
could
New Hope.
it could stop at a New Hope because they're like it, if you think too hard, it's like okay, you know, they are having this like weird medal ceremony on this like secret planet that the Empire has already found, and there was a reason they had to abandon Yavin in the beginning of Empire Strikes Back because
Right, right,
right
right.
the Empire found them,
Yeah.
and then like they're planet hopping I guess in between because Hoth was just the latest planet that the Empire found that they were hiding on. Anyway, but if you just ended on like the medal ceremony, it's like, oh yeah, like that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
I'm being a little facetious about we should just erase all post, Star Wars things. I'm just saying that like the gravity of the rebellion and what the promise of what the rebellion brings just seems a little kind of, it's unfortunate that like it doesn't really I guess
No,
there's
I
story there too about like how the Republic was just as bad as the Empire.
You found it sounds like you found a way to be upset about how good the end of Andor was, which I
Yeah, it does. It
understand.
just because it ruins the rest of the franchise because the rest of the franchise is not as good. Is my
I
point.
had a totally different view. I thought it did a restorative act that I've been waiting for since Star Wars 9 came out. And
Yeah,
if we recall, that precious year of 2019, I'm in the school of Star Wars 9 was really terrible. It
yeah,
left
well,
a
yeah,
bad taste in my mouth forever, as opposed to Avengers Endgame that left this nice taste in the mouth, right? It felt
right,
resolved. Star Wars 9 felt like a horrible, messed up resolution that, destroyed your childhood even more.
right, right.
I thought Andor did a job of restoration. It restored what we were chasing when we were kids, when we were
Yeah, I
running
haven't
around.
loved Star Wars this much since
Yeah.
at least 10 years.
And a lot of us have been in a low-level way waiting for this. We just didn't think it was possible after the events of episode 7, 8, 9, right? It just went this totally different way, and it's like we're never going to recover that. Some part of the Tony Gilroy team was like, we're going to recover that and make it mean more than it ever did. And it made me happy. And if you know me, that's an atypical thing. I'm not a heavy person, but or the end made me happy. Can we talk about some specific things?
Yeah, let's do it.
Is it episode 10? Okay, let's talk about that Clea thing. That's episode 10,
Yeah,
right? That shit is crazy.
like that she's a child terrorist that Luthen trained from
Yeah.
after he like the assumption is he was wiping out her people because I think he was an Imperial
Yeah.
soldier.
That was,
It's
yeah,
a
and
little unexplained, but
it's purposefully vague and it's fine that way.
yeah, absolutely.
But the filmmaking is incredible. There's so
Hmm.
much juxtaposition of silence and noise, and it reminded me of this indie film called Day Night, which probably no one has seen, but is very morally ambiguous and dark. And it was also a little bit like the episode where, you know, Buffy's mom dies and it's all in silence. It's incredible because Elizabeth Dula was just like killing it as Clea,
Literally, when it comes to Luthen.
literally killing it. And then you're right, and just on this terrible mission, and also on the like set piece level, that was an incredible video game stealth mission.
The
I,
hospital.
I know that only matters to the gamer dudes, but like an incredible whether it's Assassin's Creed or Hitman or Metal Gear Solid, like you're one person, there are 22 dudes you got to get past. What are you gonna do? It follows her kind of from the back, like in a video game. She's, like, oh, I'm gonna set off a bomb over here. Oh, I'm gonna slink around and then just shoot this guy real fast, and then I have to make a mad dash through these three guys, and can I shoot them fast enough? And at all this time, you could be killed instantly. And so I'm just saying, on a level of, action sequences, that was an unusual type for Star Wars. It was incredibly well done. I was fucking, terrified for her.
I mean, goes back to why like it was such a coup to bring Tony Gilroy in to Star Wars because he can bring like this whole Bourne identity
Yeah.
vibe to
Yeah.
Star Wars that never existed before.
Yeah.
And yeah, the clay stuff. And this goes back to what I think what I love so much about Andor. And it's funny because like it rekindled my love of Star Wars, but it's like the most anti-Star Wars because there's nary a lightsaber in sight.
Mhm.
You know, the Force is mysterious.
Yeah.
Jedis don't exist in this world, you know.
Yeah.
But because of that, it's almost like the and this goes back to my whole rant about the franchise. I think the franchise became too obsessed with that part of Star Wars.
Sure.
But if you go back to the original movie, the Jedi stuff is minimal. It's not like
Mm.
the driving force of that first Star Wars movie. Like
Mm.
the lightsaber battle is like in the middle, the end of the second act. You know, like the formula changed after A New Hope when like it's like set piece, third act lightsaber battle, and that's just like
Yeah.
the formula that's been like plug and repeat for 9 movies.
Yeah. I
But
think they were selling a lot of lightsaber toys as part of that, but yeah.
but you know what I mean, like that.
Yeah.
But that was not the main thrust of that. Like the Force was mysterious in those first 2 movies. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was this thing that propels us, but it's not like people weren't necessary. Like when Yoda lifts the X-wing in Empire, it's a big deal because like holy shit,
Mm-hmm.
you can do that. But then when people are like jumping around and like it diluted the like what the Force meant.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's part of the rewriting uh thing that was so amazing. I mean, basically my feeling on that was that yes, you're right, they went overboard with all the lightsaber stuff. But where we get to at the end of Andor is we see people, what's their frame of mind at this point? They must feel so disconnected from spirituality, which is to
Right.
say hope. They're all their lives are just cold hard calculations and sterile, dank Imperial corridors and Imperial standards. They've lost everything they love. The best thing they can say is they made it to a summer guerrilla camp in a planet that has some trees. But what I'm saying is it recontextualizes the thing because when you get to the beginning of Rogue One, like what better time for the space Zen wisdom to enter your life? Do you know what I mean? Like now we really get it. Before it's just like, oh, look, there's this space Zen wisdom that you can get into if you're into that. This will sound a little woo-woo, but for Cassian and Mon Mothma, they have no spiritual sense of anything anymore. They're almost completely lost. That's why it makes it extra more powerful when you did that rewatch 1 hour after the end of Andor, and I'm like, oh, this is the part where they meet Chirrut and Baze, the Asian guys, the guys who believe in the Force. That's old hokey religion, and it becomes a story of finding a higher calling. And you know that sounds woo-woo, but doesn't it
No,
make
I
more
mean, and I
sense
think it's
now?
intentional. It's in
It
like
makes
again
more
going back
sense now.
to the brilliance of the writing. It's intentional that the last thing Bill Organa says to Cassian, and remember they had been in loggerheads like throughout their
Yeah,
encounters, is "May the Force be with you." You know, like that's a phrase you had not heard in 12 episodes, 24
yeah,
episodes, because you didn't hear it in the first season either. But he says it like, and there's like extra gravitas to like him saying that to Cassian right before he does the whole superhero suit up, you know, and dramatic
yeah,
walk to his ship, you know,
yeah, absolutely.
because
It's
the Force
that,
is with him, and that nod to the healer, you know.
yeah, what else, how else are you going to continue this fight where you lost everything but to have some superstitious hope? You need some extra thing, and it can't just be about your, your awesome gorilla cause because we see it. Can we get back to the, sorry, we're gonna circle around. Like,
No, sure, we can
how
go
do you
wherever
feel?
we want.
How do you feel about how Lonnie ends up? Lonnie Young, that's sad, right?
Oh, of course it's sad. Like, I
He
mean,
was begging for his life.
well,
And
because like Luthen's not a good guy. Like he's
no.
not meant to be like the hero. I've actually seen some like complaints on, you know, the interwebs, and they always say never read the comments and media literacy is dead. But
Mhm.
sometimes, you know,
Sometimes
you're just
one
compelled
does.
to
Yeah.
to follow down those rabbit holes. And then people are like really upset, like, you know, Luthen didn't have to kill him, and like yeah, but that's the you know the morally ambiguous, you know, or not even ambiguous, he's not morally ambiguous, he's very like He's an accelerationist. He's like he wanted Gorman to burn. Like it was, you know, that
Yeah,
was of a piece of like Luthen's character to be like, because as soon as he told Lonnie about Yavin, I'm like, oh, he's not
yeah,
getting him off this plane. He's not getting him off Coruscant. You know, that
yeah,
was straight out
and
of a spy movie. You know,
yeah, and that's freaking harsh. And it is what Cassian does at the very first scene of Rogue One too.
right?
And we gloss it over, but it's kind of like, Jesus.
I mean, and again, the cause is more important. The rebellion is more important. That's why
Yeah,
the whole stealth mission at the hospital was not for Clea to save Luthen,
yeah, that one's also super harsh.
right?
Uh,
And then he's actually her father figure.
yeah,
Like, am I your daughter now? I'm like, well, just rip the heart out. Literally rip my heart out because that's what she does. You know, she has to
yeah,
put him to sleep for good.
yeah. So all that just to say that shit is very harsh, and you might you might later start to wonder what is this all for? The cause, I don't know, but you might need a little, you know, space and wisdom in your life
Yeah.
to gain perspective. Anyway, so moving on back to and that was just episode 10. And then we get to freaking episode 11, and you mentioned the Bourne thing. And this is where like it gets back to the like Gilroy verse like roots of the thing. Like, if you watch the Bourne movies, all they love to do is like guys setting up in control rooms, watching tactical readouts. That's like half of the Bourne movies. And there it's all over in in episode 11 of Andor season 2. They're doing an operation, and it's mainly looking at it on screens, right? You know what I'm
Right, right,
saying?
right,
And
right, right.
the way they approach the building, you know, to breach is very, a Bourne-esque set piece.
And it's interesting too because like this has been one of the things that I have appreciated about the show from its beginning is that it also kind of makes the Empire more realistic in a way. Like
Hmm.
you get to I always use the term banality of evil and everything, but you get to see like real people be part of the ISB, real people be part of the
Hmm.
like the ones who are raiding Bix and Cassian's old apartment building are like the police officer versions of stormtroopers. They're not actually like fully armed
Yeah.
stormtroopers. They had like have half stormtrooper armor, half like Imperial officer,
Yeah.
costumes. And they're very much like, riot cop looking dudes,
Yeah. They're like riot cop dudes. Yeah.
and like there's just something like about I said this 10 years ago, I think, on this podcast when we talked about Rogue One for the first time. And one of my like favorite aspects of that film was there's a throwaway scene in the very beginning when Jin is in her like prisoner transport,
Hmm.
and it cuts to, and I wonder if this is a Gilroyism, it cuts to a couple stormtroopers like sitting on the same transport, but they're kind of like hunched over and their armor's dirty,
Hmm.
and they're just like, then you realize like these are just real dudes who have been conscripted into this army. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like they're not necessarily evil, but they are, you know, evil. They're the
Yeah.
bad guy because they have signed up to be
Yeah.
soldiers, and that's why like the again, not to shit on the sequels, the promise of the Finn story was so wasted. Like a
Oh,
stormtrooper who has a crisis of conscience.
it was super wasted.
You know what I mean?
Even now, like, yeah, I mean, imagine if, yeah, different things had played out, or if Gilroy
So
said
like,
that story. But yeah,
but so the Empire kind of like being like the way they make the Empire this realistic thing is also what makes it even more horrifying
sure,
in the movies now,
yeah,
right? Like they're not just like, costume space Nazis. It's like Nazism, it doesn't just come down on high. It slowly, fascism slowly trickles into the populace, and people just it becomes normalized, and people are just used to fascism until you've had enough and you rise up. That's the point of Nimic's whole line of like he doesn't say fascist, but he says imperial. The Imperial's need to control is unnatural, and that's why they're
yeah,
so, you know, it's
yeah.
they're so obsessed with control.
That was quite a moment. I did like how they called back to Nimic's, like, you know, podcast essentially.
Well, and
Notes
again,
to
the
self. Yeah,
filmmaking of that was so great because you don't realize it's diegetic until Partagaz pushes the button
yeah,
and you realize, oh, it wasn't just a voiceover.
yeah,
It was Partagaz listening and going, shit.
yeah,
And it's vague enough that you're like, is Partagaz believing, or is he like, oh, I know I fucked up, and the Palpatine's going to kill me anyway,
Yeah.
so let me just end it here, you know?
In that sense, his decision is overdetermined and he has no other choice. Being an
Right.
ISB guy, he probably realizes this is his closest to a win-win.
Yeah.
Whether I'm feeling it or not, I'm gonna be killed. So,
But again, it's like these are all, and I'm not saying, and we'll get into this when we talk about Cyril and Dedra, but like they're not good people. But what I appreciate about the show is that they are people.
yeah,
You
they're
know,
absolutely people.
like when you hear the blaster fire inside Partagaz's office, the other Imperial, the stormtrooper's moving, and he's like, "No, it's fine," because he
Mhm.
knows you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's a
oh, no,
human moment.
yeah, he knew that would play out that way.
But
Yeah,
it's a human moment. It wasn't just like a
definitely.
cold, like Imperial evil mustache twirly. It
Yeah,
was like he almost felt bad
yeah,
that Partagaz had to kill himself. And there was like a throwaway line that Krennic says to Partagaz where he's like, "Leo, I can't protect you anymore."
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, those kind of small moments where you humanize the bad guys just is not something that you get in like, fan servicey fiction. It's something that you get in real, like cinematic, novelistic storytelling.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly well thought out. I mean, we can talk about Cyril Deidre now. I don't know if that's your big finish, but like we can, there are so many things to talk about. I want to mention briefly, it was nice that it got back to Nimic's speech because there's a symmetry in that every arc, well, the last two arcs ended with a speech, or rather, and or the arcs often end with a speech. In season one, it was his mom. In season two, there's Mon Mothma's speech. There's also Bix talking to him at the end. And
On the
it,
iPad.
and I can't help but think again of the Star Wars 9 script that didn't happen, where
Hmm.
there's a very powerful speech moment from Princess Leia, and it just never happened. But it was in the version that we consider a superior Star Wars 9 script, and it was really, I feel Gilroy knows about that too, and it was recalling those things where yes, I mean, anyway,
Yeah, no, bring me to that multiverse universe where Duel of the Fates was made instead of Return of Rise of Skywalker, and then I would not have the same issues I have with that sequel trilogy.
absolutely.
But I think that like calling back to Nimic again because the what that through line
Hmm.
what you realize is that looking back at the 24 hours you just spent in this world of Andor was so propulsive. Even though like people complain it's like kind of slow burn storytelling, it's a little like you gotta. But then if you really look back at the last 24 hours you just spent in the world, you're like, wow, it really did move the story, the move the not just the story. That's the thing. It wasn't just the story, it was the characters, it was the people. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like it turned all of these interesting characters into people. And I think that's what's missing from other Star Wars storytelling. Is that all of the people other than Cassian Andor in this series were wholly newly created for this series, except for Mon Mothma,
Hmm.
right? Like at least the important one, Dedra Miro didn't exist until this show. Cyril Karn didn't exist until this show.
Yeah,
Clea did not exist. Luthen did not exist.
yeah,
And they are some of the most compelling Star Wars characters ever.
yeah. We do get back to the thing that only adults can say that, right? Or only adults can watch this show. But
Mm.
we have to remember don't you think? There's
Yeah, it's prestige. It's a prestige drama.
I understand what you're saying, but the argument does not hold that now kids can understand Star Wars better because it's still not for them. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's a tricky thing. It is better. It's better in the way that you get older and you have adult understanding. To go with the very simplistic kid thing that you loved.
That's a good point. I mean, if anything, that's the one kind of like jarring thing about going from Andor 12 to Rogue One is that like there are bits of like Rogue One still plays like a Star Wars movie.
Right,
So it is a little bit of a whip, even like at the time, and it was like, whoa, this is a Star Wars movie where the guy just murks someone in
right.
the first 5 minutes. But there's still like more, it's that more swashbuckly,
Yeah,
score, and you have more of the, like you said, the pew pew.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a jarring. Like there's someone I think on one of the fan channels who recut Rogue One into like Andor episodes. So
Okay.
like he basically broke it into three parts, cut out some scenes, rescored it with like the score from the show to make it less bombastic, you know.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what that's like because I've seen like a couple clips and it's pretty cool, but I haven't seen the. It's kind of the reverse of what we talked about last week, where there's rumors of them cutting Andor the series into movies,
Yeah.
and
Which I don't know about that one, but I want to say for me, again, that's what's so awesome about Andor was it takes us back to that kid's place and it makes that journey possible. Our whole struggle as Star Wars fans basically there was this kid thing and now we're adults and we have different feelings about it. And Andor could have like erased the kid thing, but what it did was it sets up this thing, this very weird time travel thing. Watch Andor as an adult, go to Rogue One, let's say like young adult, kind of
10 years
kind
ago, adult, like
kind of
not yet middle aged, but
swashbuckly,
getting close.
right? Kind of serious, but kind of swashbuckly, and then you would end up back at A New Hope, which tonally is just la 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 space fairy tale. It's just, less complex in obvious ways. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I
You
mean,
get back to being a kid.
and it's again, it's interesting too because like, and maybe it's just the times are different. Even that first Star Wars movie, as brilliantly edited and paced as it is, I think does not fit into like the way 21st century movies are paced and edited. It's still pretty like I was saying earlier, it's pretty like it's still a slow burn.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No.
It's
It's
still very much a movie from the 70s.
yeah. It's a weird looking one. Like yeah.
You know
Today.
what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there isn't a lot of. I mean, even it doesn't feel as kid friendly today as it did 50 years ago.
Oh, that's interesting. I know.
You know, I think if you took like an 8-year-old today and put the first Star Wars in front of them, I think they'd get bored with it.
Well, yeah, because it's not edited. That's another issue, which is that our standards for what kid editing has become this whatever
Right.
hyper like insta-real style. But that's a whole other issue because all that shit is bullshit. Editing, to that point, what it did have, New Hope did, was it established the Star Wars vocabulary,
Sure.
which they followed in Andor, was completely violated in Star Wars Episode 9, and that's why it sucked. So I'll just give one example. This is gonna, I don't know what this will sound like.
Old man yells at cloud.
Well, part of the vocabulary is spaceship approaches planet. We see it. That's very important to establishing like how the story feels. The story is going somewhere. You always have to have the establishing shot of spaceship flying up on planet. And they did that in Andor, and it's a small thing, but they didn't have it in in Episode 9, and it just ends up being cutting from people on different planets just talking, and it sucks because you have no sense of you don't care what's happening at all.
I don't
Anyway,
remember that, but to be fair to me, I have still not seen that movie since I saw it in the theater in December
that
2019.
was a one and done.
That's the only Star Wars movie I've only seen once.
Yeah. Um, man, there what was anyway, that's just an example, but I'm saying it again, Andor fit into the Star Wars thing, original Star Wars thing. Gilroy was alive. He knew what it was doing cinematically for the culture. He just recontextualized it.
I
Anyway,
mean, do you think again this kind of a little bit circles back to my even my Superman critique earlier. You know, because when I talk about being worried about cinematic universes and all that kind of stuff, and like doing the homework, it's not even that. It's like the fan servicey stuff, right? Like the story and the characters are sacrificed for the fan service.
hmm,
Like as long as someone gets to do the Leo DiCaprio meme where you're pointing at the screen, it doesn't really matter if things make sense. You know what I mean? Like
hmm,
all we did is just a series of like, oh, I got that reference. And what I appreciate about like Andor versus some of the other Disney Plus Star Wars things is it's less that. There's not a lot of like, ooh, I get that, you know, oh, I recognize that.
yeah,
like it's there, you know, that he is referencing things from Star Wars, like the Gorman massacre is not something he invented. Mon Mothma's escape's not something. In fact, you know, we talked about it last week. There are people who are a little bit pissed that like he tweaks canon a little bit, you know.
Yeah, yeah. It's just more artfully done. But again,
Right.
and again, it's for an adult audience.
But
Um,
that's what I mean. Like, so is it? But fan service is also for an adult audience because it's
yeah, but
like
it's this
it's a
particular.
different type of, you know, adult audience. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, it is that kind of, yeah, guy on the couch just enjoying seeing the references because it makes them feel smart, and that plays into the psychology of fandom these days, which I don't know
right?
if we want to get into, but
We're
there's
not
the whole
happy
like,
to.
yeah, I feel smart, the because I remember that thing from that thing, and oh wait, now that contradicts that thing, and I'm gonna post about it even though it's wrong.
So I mean, let me just. I guess when I keep being vague when I say the Disney I'm talking about the Mandalorian because the Mandalorian when it started I thought was a smart, interesting take on Star Wars where you had this guy who was separate from everything we know about Star Wars. Like there's some familiarities,
Yeah,
right? He's a bounty hunter who looks like Boba Fett,
yeah,
but and it takes place in a time period we're familiar with because it's right after Return of the Jedi. But he's going on these adventures and he meets his little baby Yoda thing, and it's like a lone wolf and cub in space. And it's like, oh, that's cool.
yeah,
And then it slowly became, oh, and here's Boba Fett, and here's Bo Katan, and here's the Dark Saber, and here's a bunch of stuff from Clone Wars, and oh, Ahsoka's there too. And it became and then and then Luke Skywalker fucking shows up. You know what I mean? It
right,
became too fan servicey,
yeah,
and
it
that's where the
became
Mandalorian lost me.
absolutely it became too lore-y and homeworky, and it was not as cool as the original premise. So
And what's
yeah.
cool about Andor is like I'm actually like as much as I wish there was more because I just loved being in the world. I'm kind of glad that it went from being a 5 season show to a 2 season show because Gilroy was like, we don't have the budget or the time to like
Hmm.
spend 10 years making Andor shows. So
Hmm.
let's do this whole time skips between arcs in season 2.
Hmm.
But it didn't devolve into like what the Mandalorian ended up being in season 3. You know what I mean?
Right. Or not yet
There
until
was no edict to like, oh, you have to somehow bring in blah blah blah, you know?
well, I mean, not yet. Remember, we're celebrating Andor. It's someone's gonna be like, wait, we do need more of this. Hopefully. And then that thing you're feared of will happen, but maybe it'll be a cooler version of that.
Well, no, you know what I would love? I would love to have a movie set during A New Hope, but from the perspective of like Vel and Clea.
Yeah, what are they doing,
It's
man?
like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Like they're in the background while The New Hope is happening. So we only see like the Death Star trench run and like, you know, Princess Leia's stuff, rescue, like off to the side. But
Yeah.
we follow like I'm just saying Vel and Clea just because they're like the two surviving rebels that we know from this show.
We absolutely need to
Because
see
Bix is
Val.
raising Cassian's kid with B2 emo on Mina
Yeah,
Rebel. So
and
we
and
don't.
that's nice. We're not going to bother her anymore.
Yeah, exactly. We don't.
That's sweet. But yeah, it would be fun to. We absolutely need Val and Clay action figures for one thing.
Well, there is a Vel action figure already from season
Oh,
one.
okay, great. Yeah, and it's funny again. Like it puts all these things in perspective. Like when I put on A New Hope the other day, and among all the other things you mentioned, like Luke is not a serious person. Like
He just wanted to
uh,
go and get some power
he's just a
converter.
dude on a farm, like bored. Like I want to go race cars. Vel would look at that guy as like, who is this fucking kid,
Right.
right? But that's what's so interesting. That's why it becomes more interesting with that knowledge.
Yeah. Well, again, going back to like the medal ceremony, I wonder what they're thinking with like, why do these jokers get medals?
Yeah, what the hell? Oh, because of the Force. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, we definitely need I'm not saying need because that's part of the fandom pathology. It would be
Right.
nice if there was Vel and Clea more because they're so extraordinary. Um,
Episode 4.5 or something. You know what I
Episode
mean?
4.8 or so. Okay, I'm just gonna add my Asian American pride thing. Just to try to
Yeah, I'm curious about how you tie that into Andor,
well,
the show
it's
with the Latino leads. But go ahead.
well because it's okay, it's Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander month, and like the Rebel Alliance, Asians in America have this problem of we can't decide on an umbrella. We can't agree that there is an umbrella. So we have that
We're
problem.
those rebel factions in the first arc where we were like shooting at each other.
Yeah, we're playing rock paper scissors over nonsense. But yeah, But one of the things that will always be true is that Star Wars is made out of Asian stuff. It's a cultural exchange product. I don't know if we need to rehash the whole thing.
It's
East Asian
interesting you
stuff.
say culture exchange. Other people might argue it's cultural appropriation.
That's why I didn't want to go down the whole rabbit hole, but I would argue that it is cultural exchange and it is an Asian American product, even though no Asians are involved. Whatever. It's exchange because Kurosawa movies were made out of Western stuff, and
True,
then
that's a good point.
Star Wars was made out of Kurosawa movies. So we can't say it was just grabbing
Right.
Japanese stuff wholesale. It's grabbing some Middle Eastern stuff. It's grabbing a lot of East Asian stuff. It's grabbing the philosophies. It's
I
grabbing a
mean,
lot.
Andor as a whole just did Les Mis for like 6 episodes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and there's the musical flavor here. But anyway, one of the problems we face as Asians in America recurringly is that we're sort of thought of as emotionless, soulless Vulcans. You know,
Wrong
arguably,
franchise.
right, exactly. But you know what I mean.
I know
That
what
one
you mean.
applies. Arguably more than a socioeconomic problem, we have that prevailing problem. We're just sort of thought of, other than the people who don't have souls. We're just like spies for the Chinese government or something. This is a recurring problem, which, by the way, has been prevalent, has been increasing since 2020. And we have jerkwads in the government who are Asian and South Asian, but whatever. But the thing that made me so happy for a second was, again, Rogue One is the one where they finally gave voice and face to these East Asian spiritual concepts that have been floating around Star Wars forever in names like Jyn Erso, Han Solo, Lando, blah 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 blah. They finally gave voice and face to him. You meet Sheridan Bays, and they again back to the Cassian is totally lost and without spirituality at this moment. They add the space Eastern wisdom at the moment when you both most need it, and they actually have voice and face to it. And I think that makes the argument that um, Asian Soul saves Star Wars. You know what I'm saying? I realize it's a bit of a stretch, and I may write this up on the blog in a more coherent fashion. But it was just like, you know, I can't get away from that feeling that they they must they must have felt so lost at the moment, and or made us feel how lost and like and we're all going through this now too as culture. Like what where can we turn? Everything is just like propaganda and just sort of like cold, hard, you know, sterile, um, officious rollout of fascism. You need something higher. You need soul, and in this case, atypically, the soul comes from an Asian source, an East Asian source.
Yeah,
And
no, I mean the
you know
the
what I
the
mean?
Guardians of the Will is they are the monks who protect the Force and on
Yeah,
Jeddah they get brought in to the story. And let's not forget Bodhi Rook is the defecting Imperial pilot who brings the name Galen Erso to Saul Guerrero, who played by Riz Ahmed. And
absolutely.
Bodhi
So
also his name is a Buddhist Sanskrit, word,
yeah, so it's in there. It's like they love doing that naming thing in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Again, part of the reason for this thesis is because all the names in Star Wars are from Chinese, Japanese, or an Eastern source.
Well, and like you talk about like a lot of the Middle Eastern analogies, and again, this was a thing that was discussed on this podcast by various whoever the co-hosts at the time were back in 2016. But like, the whole Jeddah sequence in Rogue One plays like something out of the Iraq War or the
Yeah,
Afghanistan War, and again, it goes back to like one man's terrorist is another man's revolutionary, right? Because
yeah,
like in that context the Imperials are the US government.
yeah,
The rebels are what we used to call terrorists, in this
right.
kind of like Middle Eastern coded religious place,
Yeah.
where Jin has to wear, scarves over
Uh-huh.
her head.
Yeah. And then
It's
so
a
how do
very
we
interesting that analogy,
it is, and then how do we frame this when, both sides are have killed and we kill the killers? Whatever. We need something higher. Like okay, like it's sort of the trope of, you know, guy finds Eastern wisdom when he's lost, with like something we know about Nerds of Color. It's sort of the Iron Fist story, the Doctor
Yeah, yeah,
Strange story.
yeah, yeah.
That's just a short way of what I'm saying. But now what happens for me is if you watch Andor, Rogue One, and then A New Hope, that story actually happens. A guy at the end of his rope finds the magic Eastern wisdom, but it's kind of beautiful because it's first it's Donnie Yen, and then they're even more assed out because most of them get killed getting these plans, and then Luke.
And then all the white people take over.
And all the white people take over, but they receive the same wisdom.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
receive the same soul. And that's what ends up saving the universe. Duh. Go Asians. That was my rant.
Yeah, I that makes sense. And if you do want to extrapolate on it, I'm more than happy to read your further thoughts. Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to like just how much this show reframes not just Rogue One, but the entire original trilogy. Because again, the Empire back then was kind of this nameless, faceless bad guy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But what the show has done is really kind of put some gravity to what the Empire really was. And again, a lot of you have the terrible Star Wars fans who hate politics and Star Wars,
Hmm.
and you talk about George Lucas's Asian influences. He's been on record to say like the rebels to him they were the Viet Cong, you know.
Right. Which I'm gonna say that might have been a reductive,
Well, but
oversimplified.
Lucas has even said that though, right? Like he
He
looked to
has,
the
but
Viet
I'm
Cong
saying I
as
don't
the right.
think he would he say that in this would he tweet that in this day and age? Probably not.
I don't know. I mean,
It
but
would get taken anyway. It's a
but I
complicated
mean, but it's
statement.
difficult to and Tony Gilroy has said like he wrote this 2 years ago, so he's not like commenting on the current political climate, but the current political climate, as we know of any political climate, is just an echo and a reflection of history. And the historical
Yes.
record shows fascism doesn't just appear. It
Yeah.
slowly invades, it slowly takes over, it assimilates and crushes culture
Yes.
into a cold, sterile thing, which is what the whole Gorman um series depicted. And just one more shout out to our guy Cyril Karn. We didn't talk about last week, but again, it's all subtle. They don't spoon feed you this information. But if you noticed the what was it 789? It was the Gorman arc, right?
Yes.
When Cyril first moves to Gorman, he still looks like he did on Coruscant. His hair is very upkept, his collars are
Hmm.
very tight, and as he becomes, you can tell he's becoming more sympathetic to the Gorman cause.
Yeah.
His hair loosens, his
Yeah.
wardrobe becomes more Gorman.
Yeah.
It's just a very interesting, subtle nod to his character without actually saying, "Oh, he sympathizes with the Gore now,"
Yeah.
because
No,
he
it's
never
very
really did. I mean, he was still an Imperial, but
yeah.
he had that crisis of conscience was very like well performed
Yeah, and also designed
and designed. Yeah,
by the
presented,
by the
well presented.
costumer. Yeah, totally. He loosened up. He, became he did the cosplay of being one of the people and halfway became one in the process.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
even like
pretty
the way he
neat.
subtly arranges all the spiders he's been, collecting.
Those freaking spiders.
But it just again, it's just a
That
subtle. It's like even showing Cassian watering
yeah.
his plants right before he leaves Yavin.
Yeah, that
Like
was
those little
perfect.
character touches is, I think, something that all like of the nerdy media that we consume, which is like as we said earlier, more concerned with just making Easter eggs and references.
Hmm.
I would like less Easter eggs and more small character moments.
Well, yeah.
You know
Well,
what I mean? That's
we
that's that's what I ask for in my nerdy fiction going forward.
we can all hope for such a thing. It was really a wonderful piece. And yes.
Sad it's
Also
over.
sad it's over, but I don't know. The exercise of watching this new trilogy with Andor, Rogue One, and A New Hope, I'm really into it. We'll also note that although we observe these true life rhymes, of how fascism rolls out. Also, we know that fascism doesn't win. We It has its moments. It's real hard. It's a horrible thing that it occasionally surges, but we do know from history it does not win.
Yeah.
So let's just remember that.
They defeated the second Death Star in Return of the Jedi. So
Yep.
like Return of the Jedi, we defeated the Death Star 4 years ago,
Yep.
but they had another one.
There are peaks and valleys. Yeah.
They were slowly building another one that we didn't know about.
Yeah, let's talk. I mean, speaking of fan service, like they were avoiding saying the word Death Star for like so long, and then when she finally says it, it's like, oh yeah, fucking, I don't know,
Well, no, it was
stuff like that.
well, yeah, but that was cool. Again,
Yeah,
it's like the May the Fourth. They were able to like deploy it at the right moment, and I feel like
yeah,
a lot of times with fan services, they just want to get all the Easter eggs out as much as possible,
yeah,
so that everyone can do the Leo point and not like they just wanted to say I got that reference,
yeah.
but by holding it to
A moment when it mattered. Yeah,
right when it mattered too, because like the fact that Dedra knows about the Death Star is what signed her death certificate.
yeah. It's a word. It's the word you can't say.
Right.
You
And that's
could.
why when Krennic puts his finger on her head.
Oh, so mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
That, I actually did a little bit of a, I get that reference because if you recall from The Dark Knight Rises, when Ben Mendelsohn is the slimy little Wall Street guy in that movie.
Oh yeah, he is that
And
slimy
there's a
guy.
scene where he's like, I'm in control. And then
Mm-hmm.
Bane puts his hand on his shoulder and he says, do you feel in control?
Mm-hmm.
And like that just reminded me of that. It's almost like Ben Mendelsohn
Oh yeah.
got his Bane moment when he just
So
put his
you got the
fingers.
reference and you discovered the interconnected Dark
I
Knight
did that on my
Andor
own, just as
universe
a Batman guy.
just because you're awesome. Yeah. Okay, that's great.
I don't think that was intentional. I don't think Tony Gilroy was like, remember that throwaway scene in the movie that no one likes, The
Oh,
Dark Knight Rises?
it did very much recall that. It was shot the same way as the Batman interrogates the Joker scene for a while there,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
just his torso. Okay.
Right when he shows because he's right behind her and you don't see his face, you just see his
Okay.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean
And that's good
every
shit.
touch is so good in this show.
Yeah. I have one more Cleo rant. Do we
Yes,
have time for one more Cleo
let's
rant?
do it.
It's a question. Do you think that they were hiding the fact that she is the prototypical Star Wars heroine type, so that could be sort of a surprise when it happens? And I'm just saying this, okay, sorry, there is a phenotype that is associated with Star Wars heroines, and
The
we
brunette, yeah.
brunette, sort of British, a little bit Jewish, petite, brown hair, Carrie Fisher,
And she looks like Carrie Fisher. Like
Natalie
so much
Portman.
so that like
Right.
there was a running theory on Star Wars fan sites where like maybe she is Leia.
Right, but we didn't think about that immediately. Or am I wrong? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think there were people who from her introduction have thought she just because she does look there are some scenes where it's like, whoa, she if they
Yeah.
didn't cast her as Clea, they could have used her to be like the recast.
Yeah, the final
Like
shot of Rogue One, as it were. But anyway,
right, yeah, exactly.
but yeah, but sorry, but I'm just asking you. Did you see that early?
I didn't, but this show is so good that did not even occur to me. Even when she was being a badass in episode 10, it never occurred to me that like, she's filling the Rey, Amidala,
Jin
Leia,
prototype.
Jin. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's when it occurred to me in episode 10. I was like, oh wait, she's one. She's the one. She's Princess Leia.
But again, that was only that episode because the next episode she's vulnerable. She's like not just a damsel in distress, but she's like I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like even though she was desperate to get the message out,
Yeah. Yeah. That was
again
deep.
because they're not. That's the thing, they're not archetypes. They're people, and that's why I didn't like. Yeah, like she does fit the phenotype, but where she doesn't fit is that she's actually a human being, where everyone else is an archetype.
Well, or they die early in the case of Jyn Erso. I'm just saying,
Well,
I'm not against the phenotype. I'm just saying it
no, but you
added-
know what I mean. Like
No, absolutely. You're right.
but Jyn Erso is not a real person. Neither. Unfortunately, neither is Rey or Leia.
Ray is less developed. I'm a big Generoso fan.
Yeah.
I feel like she's the best one and done character. She becomes a true fanatic believer in the course of feature film, and that's right. I don't know. Your point is taken.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
just saying it added symbolic power when you realize, oh, she's the Star Wars hero that
Yeah, 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 for sure. For sure.
we weren't even sure was in this
Oh, it was
show.
great because like
Yeah.
when the ISB shows up, they're like, it must have been a team.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
like, no, it was one person.
Yeah. Just gotta plan your approach and have six bombs conveniently in the like. Did she plant all those bombs, or have they been there for months? I That part I don't get, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Very,
Yep.
very, very resourceful, very well executed plan.
Well, like we said a couple episodes back, the fact like the way they filmed the scene where she was trying to remove the audio device from the artifact at the party,
Yeah,
like the fact they were able to make that so tense and so
yeah,
dramatic.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, literally, they can do anything on this show, and I'll eat it up because they just execute so well.
yeah. And then there were the ending credits of the
So I saw
final
you make
episode.
that mention on social media. Are you talking about the score?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's was all I was waiting for. Do you remember when I asked, do you think we'll have any original Star Wars score? I believe you said probably not.
yeah, I did say that.
It was amazing.
So tell me
Talk
about
about a
that.
slow burn.
Yeah, yeah. So like, I will be, I'll come clean. I turned it off as soon as it was over. I didn't even watch the credits, and
Hmm.
then I remembered I think I saw someone tweet or someone say like, "Oh, wait till you get to the end of the credits." And I remembered last year or like the last season, there was an end credit sequence when they showed the Death Star. That's what they were building on Narkina
Right,
5.
right.
So I was like, "Oh, what could it
Is
possibly
there a
be?"
stinger? Yeah.
So yeah, part of me was like hoping not because like it ended so well. So I fired it back up right at the credits and watched through. And
Hmm.
then and it wasn't just like a nod to John Williams. It was like the rousing end score from Star
Yeah,
Wars.
yeah. They're playing the Andor theme, and then the original Star Wars score starts. And it was something I was hoping for this whole time, and didn't think it would happen. And the reason it's important is because, again, on the filmmaking level, when you go back to watch those first original trilogy, you really have your objective eye on, it's really about the music.
Yeah.
It's really about the music in that movie. It's a musical kind of just kaleidoscopic experience that John Williams is making you care about this shit.
There was an option, I believe, on the DVD. I don't know if it ported over to the Blu-rays, but I remember when the DVDs for the original trilogy came out, there was an option where you could just watch it with the score only.
Yeah.
And
And
honestly, it's better.
it works. It works because, again, higher power, the music calls you to something else that you haven't had in this whole very harsh, spy oppressive, story. It just at that moment, no, we didn't need any more story information. We needed to be reminded that
Where this is leading. Yeah.
where this is going. And that was so beautiful. I don't know. Some people will know what I'm talking about. Some people won't. Some people wanted an extra scene with like, whatever, the introduction of Mephisto or whatever. Doesn't matter. They brought the score back at exactly the right moment, which was the end. Slow burn works.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, that's it for Hard Knock this week. We might take a brief hiatus for the next couple weeks because I just wanted to get through Andor.
yeah.
And now that we have, I just need to go find some rest on Mina Rao with I'm glad B2 Emo's okay. That was the one thing he was so sad when he never saw Cassian again.
Yeah.
And,
Doesn't even seem like he has a date at the end.
Yeah, he's got a little robot buddy.
Yeah,
So cute.
Everyone's
Yeah.
got some hope on that space wheat planet.
But if people want to find you on the interwebs, Dominic, what can they do?
I'm Dominic Ma, DOMMAH on the social medias.
And I'm The Real Chow. You can follow the Nerds of Color on all the media platforms at the Nerds of Color and find this podcast at hardknockmedia.com. That's it for the podcast. We'll be off for the next couple, but we'll be back later in the summer. Until then,
Pop culture
I don't know, man.
The Force will be with you. Always.
Always.